Get started for today. Our subject is seller appointments today. So, who has been on a listing appointment before? Couple of you, and a couple of you, it's a brand new thing, right? So, today we're going to go over some of the good practices for while you're on those seller appointments and how to have great conversations. And then we're going to get into a little bit of what you guys have been doing every day in terms of script practice and making calls. So we have a full day ahead of us, and I'm really excited. So let's see. Just want to make sure I'm following the material. All right, so I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint and share my screen with you. All right. So today, in terms of growing our business, like we just chatted about, we will be talking about making seller listing presentations and getting listings. All right, I just want to set it up so I can see you guys really quick. All right, so this slide here, it talks a lot about where sellers are finding their real estate agents. So the first question that's probably coming to mind for you is, I'd love to go on a seller appointment, but I don't have a listing appointment. I don't have anyone who's calling me to say to list my house, right? So you'll have to like, where are these calls coming from? So what we found is that 39% of sellers were referred to their real estate agent through a friend, neighbor, relative, someone like that, someone in their world, right? So to me, what that says is there is a whole lot of opportunity for us to go get the other 60%. If only 39% came from referrals from their friends, neighbors, and relatives, then we have 60% of people that we can basically go out after in terms of they don't already know somebody. So I like that number. 27% is they used the agent previously. 5% is a personal contact by the agent. 4% is internet websites. 3% is they visited an open house and met the agent. And 22% is other. What do you guys think might be some other places where sellers may be finding real estate agents to list their properties?
House showing?
House showings, yeah, yep. So maybe they called the sign in the front yard. Maybe they called the front desk of an office and said, "Can you hook me up with an agent?" And then they took them out for a showing. That could be. Mm-hmm. What else? What else do you guys think?
Mailers?
Mailers, yeah. What I'm not basically all marketing, right? In these everything that's here, there's really nothing that was in terms of marketing. So what are some marketing ideas that you might do to try to find seller leads? What are some things you could do besides mailers, like Michelle mentioned? What else? What's some broadcast marketing you can do?
Social media, Facebook.
Social media is a big one, right? We are lucky to be in real estate in the days of social media because it is really easy and really inexpensive to get in front of a lot of people. It's an amazing thing, right? For $15, you can go get in front of 1,000 people. That's huge.
Yeah.
What else? What else?
Well, billboards. Look, I'm in Florida right now, and I notice tons of billboards with realtor ads.
Sure, billboards. Yeah, like things that are what we like to call, they're like casting a net, right? So you put up a billboard, you put a sign on the side of your car, all these things where just people may notice your face, right?
Or a magnetic sign on the side of your car, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What about something a little bit more direct? What about if you were to go put door hangers on a neighborhood, right? You go maybe not even knock on the door because of COVID. You could knock on the door. But maybe you're like, I'm just going to go hang some door hangers, that kind of thing.
Allison, I got to say for the Capital District, you got to hit up Sarah if you're going to do that. They have very strict rules about that.
Yes,
right now.
There are strict rules around that. Mm-hmm. Yep. Make sure you talk to your broker to make sure that you're adhering to those guidelines.
Well, one of those doorknob hangers, with a slot, you just put on your doorknob, one of those ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Networking events.
Networking events. Awesome. So, in terms of getting to know more people, when you guys are thinking about how you're expanding your networks, COVID makes that a little bit more challenging than normal, right? It's a little less easy to maybe go and join a group or that sort of thing. So, what types of things are you guys doing to expand your sphere, to get to know more people?
Well,
What are some ideas you have?
when you go to church every Sunday, you meet the people next to you, or well, it used to be like every Sunday, but due to COVID, you had to register, go to church, and you're spread out. But yeah, church.
Yeah, church is a good one. Church is it's a community, and people want to support people in their community, right? What else?
You
I'm
have
calling my vendors,
Vendors. I like that.
and they're actually.
Olivia, I think you had one.
If you have kids and they do sport or are on teams,
Yeah, that's a great one. There's a whole bunch of parents sitting on the sidelines that are really bored.
and trust me, they want to hear everything about your life. Trust me.
And real estate is one of those things that it's a universal topic, right? As soon as you say you're a real estate agent, like how many people are like, oh, how's the market? Right? It's like automatic question. People love to talk about it, especially people you don't really know well. It's an easy topic to talk about because they already understand it. It's relatable. What else? What other ideas?
Well, if you go to your cities, like in Rochester, we have Rochester Public Market, and it's open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. There's a whole bunch of people that goes, and you can probably pass your cards out, or just or talk to the vendors, and there might be some people around, just listening. So stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yep. The more you can have conversations, the better. And then this next slide talks a little bit about why an agent might choose, or why a client may choose one agent over another. So what is it that they're looking for in an agent? And then how can you direct your conversation around these things so that they understand that you can help them with whatever that need might be? So what this is first saying is that 21% of people hire a real estate agent to help the seller market their home, right? So they may think, well, I totally understand how to do the paperwork. I'm not worried about that. My attorney can help me. I've sold houses before. I get the process. I just don't have the means to market it. I need someone to put it in the MLS, to send out mailers, to make sure that the people in the real estate world know about my house, right? Do you think that's more of an issue or less of an issue in today's market that is so inventory challenged? What do you guys think? Less of an issue. I agree, Adam. Yep. Because people aren't so worried about getting offers. They kind of know they're going to get offers as long as it's overpriced. Yet at the same time, they probably need more help with the process, right? And actually handling all the showings. The next one is that 20% of people need help selling the home in a specific time frame. Why do you think this might be important to sellers? Why is time frame important?
They already bought another house.
Yeah, they want to buy another house.
And when I move too, I mean, basically they have a deadline.
Yeah. What else? What could be happening in their world?
Schools, they want to move. Oh, that's a timeline thing. Never mind.
Career change.
Career change. Yeah.
Maybe get a divorce.
Divorce. That's a big one. Divorce. Estates, right? Someone's passed away. Yeah. But the key to this is you will only know that answer if you ask the question. Right?
Then you have to be confident about it too. I mean, for whatever they tell you, you just want to keep to yourself and don't spread to anybody else.
Sure, right, of course. And that's where when you fill out your agency disclosure form, really having them understand that what they tell you is held confidential, that you're not just sticking that agency disclosure in front of them saying, oh, the state requires me to have you this sign, could you sign it? It's actually explaining to them like, hey, these are the duties I'm going to be giving to you, and one of those is confidentiality, and I'm really excited to help you, but understand that whatever you tell me will be kept between us, right? So yeah, but the key to this is that a lot of times 20% of people, they need to sell their house in a certain time frame, and that's why they're hiring a real estate agent. So we need to make sure that when we're having conversations with people and they say something like, you know, I'm thinking about selling my house, that's awesome. What about that is important to you? As soon as you say, why is that important? They're going to tell you it's time frame, it's money, it's whatever it is. But the mistake that a lot of us make is we go into presentation mode and we say things like, here's why you should hire me. And here's all the things I'm going to do for you. And here's my marketing process. And here's this, that, and the other thing. And all we did was talk about ourselves, and we didn't ask them any questions about them.
Well, yeah, it's not about you. It's about your customers, your client.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times as new agents, I remember feeling this way when I was a new agent. You get into this feeling of, I need to prove myself. I need to make it someone feel as though I'm worth hiring, that they can trust me. So I better tell them about me. But really, where trust is developed is in a relationship. And you build relationships through asking questions and getting to know somebody, right? So make sure, so as we're going through these reasons why someone picks an agent, think about the questions that you might be able to ask someone that would reveal these things. So 19% of people hire an agent to help them price the home competitively. 19%, that's a lot of people. And guess what? You all have access to the MLS. You all have all the data that you need in order to help them price a house competitively. All it takes is just getting in there and digging a little bit, right? You've all run searches in the MLS. That's fun, right? To see what's going on in the market, do the CMA. 16% of people need help fixing up the home to sell it for more money. What are your thoughts around that? If someone said to you, can you come to my house tomorrow? I'm thinking about putting my house on the market in the next 6 months, and I want to make sure I maximize my return. So can you come and take a look to see if there's anything I can do that will help me net more money? How would that make you guys feel?
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
Plus, you want to give them some advice. Like, I know a person who puts out linoleum floors or fixed bathroom floors. You know, give them some people that could do the work in their house for them.
Yeah. What types of things might you be looking for? So when you walk into the house and you want to help them in that process of identifying the things that will help them net more money, what types of things are you trying to identify?
Space, cleanliness,
Cleanliness, I like that.
decluttering.
Personal items.
Personal items, yeah.
Smells.
Smells is big, especially basements and cats, right? So to a person who's not a cat owner, if there's a cat odor, they're gonna be really turned off by that. Things like that. What else?
Who would want to sell to somebody who's not a cat owner?
I'm a cat owner, I get it.
I'm not a cat owner.
What other things might you be looking for?
Peeling paint.
Peeling paint, yeah. Why is that important for those that may not know?
Oh, lunch.
FHA and VA loan.
Yeah.
SBA don't.
Yep.
That's kind
Certain
of
type of financing requires certain conditions. And if you're in a price point, if you're looking at a house that's around the average price point in your market, you want to make sure that you are making the home available to every type of loan type to make your life easier and expand the number of buyers that could potentially buy that home. I love that. Great point. What else?
Asbestos.
Asbestos, yep. It's a big one.
Dungeons.
hmm
The lead paint.
Well, lead paint is more so we just want to make sure there's not the peeling paint, right? And as long as it's encapsulated, that's likely okay. There are some buyers that will do a lead-based paint test, yet at the same time as if I was a seller's agent, I would be looking for an offer that did not have a lead-based paint test attached to it, right? Because that just opens a can of worms. That makes an offer a little less attractive.
Maybe half-finished projects.
Yeah. Like they forgot to put the molding back up after they painted. Stuff like that. What about if they say to you, you know, our bathrooms are they're fine, they function, but we're thinking about redoing it. We got a contractor in here. We think it'll cost about $12,000. Do you think it'd be worth it for us to redo our bathroom? How might you respond to that?
In this market, probably not.
Yeah. We don't really, until you run the comps, it's hard to tell, right? If time is not an issue, it could help or could not. But until we look at the comps, we don't really know. So as soon as someone says to you, can you come to my house to check out what it is that I should do? The first thing you should do before you go is go look at what's for sale in that neighborhood and look at what has closed in that neighborhood and look at the condition, right? Then you have a little bit of an idea of what's been going on there. And then if they say to you, you know, I'm thinking about redoing my bathroom, and you're like, well, I did notice that everything that sold on the high end of the price points was completely redone and renovated. And the couple that were not did sell for $20,000 less. If you have that in your mind, then yes, you know that $12,000 would pay off. Or maybe not. Or maybe in today's market, it didn't make a difference at all. So there's not a standard answer there is kind of my point. So I think that what's really important is if you know you're going to a house, the most important thing to do is make sure you run that search before you go that gives you a little information about what's going on in their neighborhood and how they can position themselves competitively, right? Because maybe, like Scott said, it's very possible that in today's market, it will make no difference at all. Because people are so desperate for houses that they really would have sold the house for the same thing just as fast if they did not redo the bathroom. So that's a great way to really position yourself as the expert with the knowledge that they are looking for if you come kind of prepared with that stuff in mind. 13% of sellers say that they hire an agent to help them find a buyer. Right? Well, that seems pretty obvious, right? They're trying to help because they're looking to basically find the person that's going to buy their home. That seems about right. And then 11% is other reasons. So that could be personal relationships or that sort of thing, right? All right. So what are your thoughts around that? When you see that, does that seem about right? Does that seem like the reasons why someone might hire an agent?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So basically today, what we're now going to focus on is the process of when someone calls you and says, I'm looking to sell my house, what do I do next? What are the things that I should have prepared? So Ignite says there's about a 5-step process, which I think this really does cover all of the things that you might do as a listing agent. So the first thing would be going through a pre-listing questionnaire, and we're going to go through all these things. The next step is scheduling your listing appointment for when you're going to go to the house. The third thing is sending your pre-listing package. The fourth is then creating your listing presentation. And lastly is walking through the home and in the actual listing appointment. So what's interesting about this is that there's 4 things that happen before you even walk in the front door. And what makes this important is if you called someone, let's say you call a doctor's office and it's the first time you're ever going to this doctor's office, and you're a new patient, and you're kind of scoping them out, right? You're figuring out if this is going to be a good fit. You've heard some good things, but you're like, I think I'm going to figure this out. If you just show up on day one, you're still kind of are in that discovery phase, right? You've shown up to the appointment and you're like, all right, well, we'll see how this goes today. Versus if that same doctor, while you're on the phone making the appointment, they start asking you questions about what's important for you. They ask you, why are you coming in today? They ask you your medical history. They start asking you, letting you know what the process is going to look like, what you can expect when you walk in the door on the first day of the appointment, all of these things. When you walk in on day one, now you have a whole bunch of context and you've already had an experience. You're already experiencing that office, right? So the same idea is that we'd like to create that in the real estate world. How do I create an impression before I ever even walk in the front door? And that's a lot of what today is about. Right. So before the appointment, the pre-listing goals. So the first thing you want to be able to do is state your value. So tell the seller what you're going to bring. The second is build in the pre-selling process, building confidence and answering their questions. And the third is answering objections up front so you can save some time. So things that the seller might say to you that would be qualified as an objection, having answers to those right off the bat. So that's a little bit of what we're going to go through. So the first thing is this pre-listing packet. Has anyone seen this in their Ignite toolkit before? Have you guys had a chance to look at this? Okay, so if you go into the Ignite toolkit, right here is the pre-listing questionnaire. Okay, that's the first one, right? Yeah. Oh, pre-listing presentation. I'm sorry, we're gonna do that one first. And what's nice about this is a Word document, so you can go ahead and edit it however you see fit. Word's going slow on me. All right. So in this guide, we're basically calling it a guide to selling your home. And the first thing in there is you're telling them it's all about you. My real estate business is built around one guiding principle, that it's all about you. I will help you by taking time to understand your wants and needs and expectations, answering your questions and returning your phone calls, being honest with you, etc. So what I want to do now is we're going to split up. Does everyone have access to this? Is everyone able to pull this up? What I'd like to do is split us into groups of 3 for you guys to review it and then come back. We're only going to spend about 7 minutes on this. And then when you guys are done, we're going to come back and you're going to say the parts of the presentation that you feel like are really impactful in having a conversation with people. Okay, so I want you to go through it together and then have some ahas. Chris, can you help me with some breakout rooms? Chris, can you hear me? Okay, I'll set them up. Yeah, right. There are 20 of us. Okay, so you guys should all have invitations up for your breakout rooms, and you're going to be going through that pre-guide for listing your home. How we doing, Chris? You're back. All right. So who has some ahas from the guide to selling your home? Kimberly.
I'm going to shadow Michelle forever.
Agreed.
Amazing.
Well, you want a lot of information from your seller, definitely,
Yeah.
you know, and you ask them all these questions, which, you know, how'd you hear about me? Because, you know, that's always interesting. You know, you want to know, you know, where this person got this information about you, and where are you moving? You
Where are
know,
you moving?
a lot of good questions. I mean, sure, you gotta ask these questions that way you have some kind of idea what this person wants.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have an aha, but I do love you don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
Yeah, I like that too.
I love that. I say that to people all the time and they just kind of look at me like I'm crazy, but I love that.
It's the truth. It really is the truth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. A lot of what we're talking about today is creating that first impression for the seller, right? How are you positioning yourself as their agent and as someone who really cares about them right from the beginning? Right? So when someone's asking, if someone were to ask you questions like are in that questionnaire, how would you feel?
I would feel like,
Go ahead.
I would feel like they were really organized and like they were thorough and I was in good hands.
I love that. Awesome.
Well, Allison, it kind of goes back to what you said. I mean, I used to run a doctor's office, so it goes back to that. It's like, do you want somebody, like, say you're getting surgery, do you want somebody that has to go and like open their book on how to like, you know, do your spine surgery, or do you want someone who's gonna like know how to do it?
Yeah.
Who's gonna ask the right questions, not like, oh, let me go read how to cut you open real quick. Like,
Oh my gosh, that's a scary thought.
well, it's I mean, just implement different things into different careers. It's kind of, you can put it into real estate as well.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that feeling that we're having this conversation around being an expert in a field, and it was invoked by a 5-page piece of little guide that's already put together for you. And if that's the feeling that a seller gets just because you gave them that little piece of value, that's awesome, right? And it's not anything that's reinventing the wheel. It's not 50 years of real estate experience and selling all the $1 million houses in the area. It's just being organized, having a system, and caring, right? So I think a lot of times as new agents, we get a little nervous and we feel as though we don't know what we don't know. Yet at the same time, we forget that the impression that we give, that first impressions, most importantly, it's really not about what you know, it's just about how you make them feel. So I love that these are your ahas. So in terms of going through those questions, I always like to think of things, every question I ask is going 3 deep. Who has heard of going 3 deep before? You may have heard me say this before. So going 3 deep is, the first place I learned about this was in a Keller Williams course called Career Visioning. And we talk about this in terms of finding referrals for people that we might be looking to hire. But then I kind of recontextualized it in my head in terms of, if you ask a question, the first time you ask the question, you're probably going to get the surface answer, right? You're going to get the first thing that comes to mind. But then if you ask a question about the answer that they gave you, then you start getting to the real answer, right? The real objection, the real reason, the thing that they didn't want to say the first time. So I think a lot of times we have these questions, you have this list in front of you in your questionnaire and you're like, oh, I'm gonna ask all these questions. And then you ask the question and you're so busy thinking about what the next question is that you're gonna ask that you really don't even pause to listen to what they're answering, and
Yes.
what it is they're saying.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to do that, right? Because we're like, oh, I got to figure out what I'm going to say next.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the key to these questions is making sure that the person answering feels heard. And they feel heard by you answering back. So Michelle, will you role play a little bit with me for a moment?
Yes.
Awesome. So Michelle, I'm so excited to be listing your house. So tell me a little bit about why it's important for you to sell.
We're outgrowing our house right now. We got 4 kids and they're all on top of each other and the space is not accommodating to us.
4 kids, bigger house. Yeah, that sounds like definitely something you might need to change. So what is it that you're looking for in your new house?
Number 1, space.
Space. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to have a bigger yard. This house was our starter home and we kind of stayed in it for a little bit longer than we were expecting. We foolishly thought it was our forever home, but that didn't happen. So
Life changing.
our decent sized bedrooms. I would like a bigger working kitchen. Just so everybody knows, these are the kinds of things that I'm told on a regular basis. So I don't have any kids. Yeah, bigger, more functional kitchen where I don't have to worry about turning around and hit somebody with a frying pan on an accident.
Yeah, so it sounds like more space all around, bedrooms, living space, all of that. That's really important to you. So what would happen if you weren't able to sell your house?
If I wasn't able to sell my house, there would be continued stress in our family, I think.
Yeah.
I think that the boys are getting bigger. The girls want their privacy so they can talk to whoever, but I'm watching their phones. I think there would be madness around me all the time and come down to where I just need the space.
Yeah. So basically it's really important for you to sell so we can get you out of madness is what I'm hearing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do today is get that process done. I'm going to make it as easy as possible for you and we're going to list your house competitively and we're going to get a whole bunch of offers. It's going to be great. Ready? All right. So from one question, I learned a lot about why it's important for her to sell, about her family, about her time frame, and how it's going to make her feel if she doesn't sell. Right. And I think what's important about that is now all of a sudden Michelle feels like I understand her.
Yeah. And Allison, you taught me that in another, I think it was the book club that we were in, you mentioned it, and it actually does, because at the end of the day, it's not about the bigger space. It's about whoever it is you're talking to, there is a pain point and you're trying to get to the pain point. So a lot of big families, they're in a smaller house. They want to get out. There's a reason why, and you got to figure out the pain point. So that's why this was a really great exercise.
And maybe the house is too big. Maybe it's just way too much to maintain and I can't handle it anymore. Maybe the payment's too big. Whatever it is, you don't get to it in the first question. You get to it by asking more questions based on the answers. And if you notice, I always repeated the main point of her answer back to her. So I validated whatever it is that she said. So she knew that I heard her. And I think that's important because people need to hear that you hear them. And if you repeat it back and maybe you didn't get it exactly right, they may say to you, well, yeah, that's important, but what's really important is, right? They may reiterate something if the point didn't come across right. So that skill of validating what they just told you and then asking another question, it brings so much to light. And I call it 3 deep only because usually you get to the answer around the 3rd question. So you can take it further than that if you want to, yet at the same time, I would try to do at least 3 on those and you'll really learn a lot from people. It's kind of fun. All right, what other ahas from that pre-listing packet? What are your thoughts? So when do you think that you might send this?
Would this be the first thing you sent?
Yeah. Yep. So what I think is and really you can design this however starts to feel well for you and feel good for you. Yet at the same time, what I found worked is if the first time someone calls you, if you start to ask these questions right away, and then send this package as a follow-up package and say, you know what, I'm so excited to learn all these things about you today. I'm also going to send you a little bit before I come out to your house on Wednesday. So you can just get a little bit of what to expect from me. So can I get your email address so I can send this over to you? Now you have their email address. And that it also is a piece of material that they can go through before you even show up. And you might want to, so what I like about this is I'm going to share my screen again with you. In your Ignite toolkit, there's also a separate questionnaire. Okay, and look at this right here. It's called the pre-listing questionnaire. So you can even pull out, okay, it doesn't want to work with me, but basically it's those same questions that are in the pre-listing presentation. So you might want to pull out that page of the pre-listing presentation and just send them everything else but that. And on the phone, ask them all the questions that are in the pre-listing questionnaire. And that way you have that for your records, right? So you're gonna, as you do this a few times, you'll find the process that works best for you and how you want to execute this. Yet at the same time, I think that if you start asking those questions the first time on the phone and then send this package as a support system for what you've already built, then that tends to work really, really well. Okay. And then when you show up, the next step will be to bring your listing presentation itself. So has anyone been in Command and seen the listing presentations? You have, awesome. So just for those of you who haven't had a chance to do that just yet, if you log into Command, agent.kw.com, and go into the Designs section, then you're going to hit the little plus button in the lower right-hand corner, and we're going to choose Print Marketing. Okay. And on the left-hand side, there's different options. So today we're focusing on listings, but there's also resources for buyers, lead generation, etc. But in the listing section, there's an option for listing presentations. And in here, there are 5 different formats that you can look at. And essentially, they all say very similar things. It's just the style, right? What one is visually appealing to you and representative of you. So I'm just going to choose the first one just for ease, so to speak. And in here is a long presentation of all the different things that you can include. And this is going to be the package that you bring with you on your listing appointment. So there's things in here about you, there's things in here about their neighborhood and strategies. And so now we're going to spend the next 5 minutes, we're going to jump back into those breakout rooms. And I'd like you guys to go through these together and pick out the pieces that you think would work for you in your listing presentations. So if you're able to, then you might want to pop into Command so you can look at this presentation and you guys can go through it together. Okay, is everyone ready to do that? All right, back to breakout rooms we go. It's 9:51. We're going to come back at 10 o'clock on the dot. Welcome back. So what do you guys think of the listing presentation? What are your thoughts and ahas?
So we, in my group, we did the last one with like the plant in the background, just because I don't know, for some reason I like all white. So that's the one I would probably use. I definitely take some of the pages out.
Yeah.
If it was for me, I mean, just some of them, I know I wouldn't read through them, just being me. I definitely really added that. I love how it's like aesthetically pleasing, how it's like all nice and cute, but like I change a lot.
Yeah. And that's what it's designed to do. It's really there for you to customize. And it gives you a lot of different options, because otherwise all of you might walk into a listing appointment with the exact same package, right? And you're all different people and you all have different value and different personalities and different things that are important. So go in there. I think a great piece of homework is to really time block yourself an hour and go in there and make your presentation now.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So what we were kind of discussing in my group, so there's a page where it had the comps, all like nicely laid. Would you, so you'd give them a CMA, would you also have the comps in that listing presentation?
So here's what I would do. So I think that I would pull comps and I would put some into the listing presentation to bring with me, and I'd have them displayed all pretty and like the way that they have it shown there. But I would not bring a pricing recommendation until I actually physically saw the house.
Okay, that's how you do it.
So my thought is that, and we call that a two-step listing appointment. And you may feel as though that doesn't work for you, but that's when I was an agent, that really felt right to me. And it was the sense of you bring something, you bring comps, so you put them in that presentation so that they know that you've done your homework and that you have a good understanding of the market. Yet at the same time, you don't really know what that house looks like or what it's about or what the updates are until you actually get in there, right? So to bring a pricing recommendation before you've been in the house can be a little bit risky, right? So you might want to bring that presentation that has the comps and then say to them, here's a little bit about what's going on in your neighborhood. And I wanted you to see this today. And then when I leave here after seeing your home, and thank you so much for showing it to me, I'm going to put together a report called a CMA, a comparative market analysis. And then in there will be a pricing recommendation where we can talk about where you would like to position your home in the market. Where you would like to position your home in the market.
I like that. Okay,
right.
Thank you.
And then you can send them as a follow-up. You say, I'll send it to you tomorrow. And then you send it to them that day, right? So you always want to under promise, over deliver, under promise, over deliver. So you make them a promise, but knowing that promise that you can deliver on it faster or better than what it is that you're promising them.
Okay, thank you.
Then all of a sudden, then their expectations are a little bit lower. And then when you exceed those, you look great. Right? So I'll send you that CMA tomorrow, and then you send it to them in 2 hours or whenever you can, right? And maybe you think you probably can send it to them tomorrow. So I'll send it to you in the next day or so, and then you send it first thing the next morning, right? Something like that. But I think that sometimes if we come in with a price in mind and we get in there and the house is really different than maybe what we had been expecting, then you have a piece of paper with a price already printed on it, you find yourself in trouble, right?
Right.
So it could go either way. It could be that they've done all these beautiful updates and all of a sudden your price looks way too low and they're looking at you like, what the heck? Or it could be that the house is not maintained very well and it really can't be priced comparatively to what has sold.
Allison, how did you say that again? Can you, the statement?
Sure. So here's a little bit, I won't say it exactly the same way, but I'll say it. But here's some comps of what's going on in your neighborhood. I wanted to give you a little information of what I pulled ahead of time. And at the same time, I'm also going to put together a really detailed report that's specific to your home. It's called a CMA, a comparative market analysis. And then we can talk together about where we want to position your home in the market. Where we want to position your home in comparison to the other homes on the market. The key word there is position, right? And what you're doing is you're giving them the power, A, and B, you're letting them know that it is a competition. right? So are you positioning, so if every other house in the market is in the range of 190 to 200, and you are right in the same level of, the house is very similar, you're in the same level of updates, all that kind of thing, do you want to position yourself as the most expensive house in the neighborhood, or is the one that's just on the low end so that you get the most amount of showings, right? Do you want to sell fast, or do you want to sell for the most amount of money? What's the most important to you? Where do you want to position? Here's what the market is showing us. Here's what the comps are. Here's the range. Where do you want to position? So as soon as we come into a conversation saying, I think you should, when that doesn't happen, or when they don't get the result that they were looking for, then it's your fault. Well, you told me that, right? Whereas if you give them information and let them make the best decision for them, now they took that power back. Well, remember how we had the conversation of you wanted to try to get the most amount of money? We tried, and I totally get that. I'm so happy that we tried, because now we know that when we reduce the price a little bit, that's probably going to help the amount of offers we get. Something like that. Because as soon as they make the decision, then they take the ownership back. If we say to them, I think you should list at 190, and then all of a sudden they get like 20 offers in a day, they might be saying something like, I think you priced it too low. Instead of saying something like, I'm really glad we chose 190, or maybe I should have chose to go $5,000 higher, whatever it is. We know as agents that if you got that many offers on day one, that means you priced it right, right? It means that you did your homework, and everybody else agrees that the price you put it on was the right price. But they may have a feeling like you didn't price it right. So let it be their decision. Always let it be their decision. Our job as real estate agents is, number one, to give them the information they need to make the best decision for them.
Everybody write that down. That is the best thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Michelle's probably heard me say that like 50 times.
Well, and it's the truth though, because you know, some people like, I want to give you advice, I want to advise you, and I always say, this is your life. This is starting the next chapter of your life, and I want to give you the information so you can make the best decision for what's right for you and your family.
Right. And no matter how many questions we ask, we never know everything about them. And there could be things that make them make a decision that we just don't get. And that's okay. We don't have to agree with every single thing our client does. And we probably won't. But our job is to make sure that they have the information to make a decision for them confidently. Right.
Especially if if you know this person very well, or if they're a family member, they're going to assume you know things in their head. And I'll give you my example. I've been dealing with my cousin, whom I love to death, for about a year now. And about 2 months ago, I finally figured out what their drivers are and what their pain point was. First, it was, I want land. I want to be able to do all this stuff. The pain point is they have an easement. It got out of control and they want out. And they kept on saying that wasn't the issue, and it's causing massive turmoil in their house. So it took them basically a year to come to terms. And I knew it, but it took me, because they've been looking on and off and on and off. They got life things that are happening too. But took them a year to see what I saw the first time I sat down with them. And you have to let them go on their own journey. You can try to pull it out, but if you can't, you know, make sure you know, especially with your family, because they can go sideways.
Yeah, self-discovery, right? Self-discovery. People have to come to realizations on their own, right? No one really likes to be told what to do, especially a person who's a driver, right? Which is a lot of us as real estate agents. Like if you tell someone to do, it's like telling a toddler to do something, and what's their natural inclination? To do the exact opposite, right? As adults, we don't really grow out of that. We just do a better job of masking it, right? Because society tells us we have to. So I think that we have to keep that in mind a little bit, that we as real estate experts also don't know what is the best decision for them all the time. And whatever that decision is, we can come to it without judgment. And a lot of times what I see in our agents is usually not anything bad. They're like, oh my gosh, I really, really care about this person. And I just think they're making this crazy decision and I can't understand it. And I want to help them make a better decision for them. There's merit to that. And at the same time, if we've given them all the information that we have and they just made a different decision than we would have, that's okay. Right.
So Allison, when you get to the home and you're going to be doing your listing presentation, like what do you do when you get there? Do you walk the house first? Do you do your presentation first? You know, what's your kind of
Great
scenario?
question. Great question. So there's a couple different ways to do this. And the biggest thing that I would say is that you want to make sure that you're creating a level of comfort, right? Comfort, complimentary, all that kind of stuff. So what I like to do is go in and say, thank you so much for having me today. I love whatever. Find something that you like that you can compliment. I'm really excited to be here. Can you show me through your home? Right? And then then they're going to walk you through and they're going to tell you all the things that are important to them, right? And start asking questions about all the things, right? So that process may take 15, 20 minutes to get through the house. You also want to make sure that they don't take too long, right? And that, so kind of help them, guide them through it a little bit. And at the same time, this stage is really important. Them showing you the house and telling you all of their emotional pieces around it and what they've improved and what happened in this room and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is very important because this is where they're feeling you out and they're feeling heard, right? So in that process, they're going to show you all the stuff. And where you want to land at the end of the house tour is in the dining room, right? In the dining room at the kitchen table. Decisions are made at the kitchen table. If you think about every serious conversation in your family, they usually end up in that place, right? They end up where you sit down to have meals. It just tends to be where decisions are made. So that's where you want to land to then go through your listing presentation together. Okay. And then at that point, you already have a little bit of context built because they just spent the last 20 minutes telling you all about their house. And now you know what's important to them about the house. And you've had a chance to ask them questions and you know a little bit about them and you know why they're starting to sell. And whatever questions you haven't asked yet, when you sit down at the kitchen table, that's the time to ask them. And then you go through the listing presentation last. You don't need to go through it page by page. It's really something for them to look through after you leave. But at the same time, there may be some things that you want to point out. Like maybe if you have some comps in there, you might show them and say, you know what, I'm going to put together the comparative market analysis for you. I'll send it to you after the appointment. I'll send it to you tomorrow. Yet at the same time, here's a couple houses that have sold in your neighborhood so you can start to get an idea. But really, it's not like you need to go through it page by page. It's more so they have a piece of value to leave with. Right? They have something after you walk out the front door. So when they're mulling it over and thinking about you, this material is what is now driving home what you want them to remember. Does that make sense? The second option is some people feel as though going through the house with the buyer or with the seller can take a long time. And so to speed that process up, there are agents that will say, okay, here's my listing presentation. I will meet you in the kitchen in 5 minutes. I'm going to go through the house now. And the reason I'm going to go through it alone is so that I can see it the way that a buyer would see it. So I'm going to go through the house alone real quick, if that's okay. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about your house together. That's a way to speed up the process, right? If you find like someone's a real talker, then maybe this is the time to do that. And I like the line of, I'm going to go through it the way a buyer would go through it. But the challenge to that is that you don't have that time to build the relationship then. That 15, 20 minutes of walking through a house and having someone explain to you what's important is really all about the relationship. You as an agent, you walk through houses all the time. You're going to walk into a living room and you're going to see the thing that you need to see within the first 5 seconds. And you could walk into the next room and be fine, right? It's not about understanding the house. It's really about understanding them. So you have two different options there, but I tend to lean on the side of let them walk you through the house.
Allison, do you set it up where you say, all right, let's take the next 15 to 20 minutes even before, like, and you like not stress it, but kind of say, all right, your time's valuable. Let's take the next 15 and 20 minutes.
Yeah. And you could even position it as like, I'm so excited to go look at your house. Like, usually this process takes me about 15-20 minutes because I love to really understand the house. Right. And then that's making it seem like you're contextualizing it, that you're taking a long time to do it. In reality, you're setting the expectation that this should only take 15 minutes.
I adore you.
Hey,
So
Allison,
go ahead.
does it make sense to ask for the contract to be signed before you leave after that appointment?
So I think there is a time and a place, right? If this person is a driver, who has taken a class called the DISC profile, where it talks about the 4 different personality types? Yeah, it's an awesome class. So it basically talks about the 4 categories that a person may fall into. So a driver is someone who makes really quick decisions, right? This is usually a real estate agent, a high D. And they want the bottom line. They just want to see, what do you think I could sell it for? Tell me and we'll put it on the market. That person all day long, yep, have the contract ready, or just say like, I have it ready. I'm going to send it to you right after this appointment through DocuSign, and you can sign it. We can get it right on the market. That person is great to close right on the spot. An analytical, someone who's an S or a C in the DISC profile, someone who likes to see all the charts, the engineer type, that type of thing. It's probably, they're going to feel pushed if you try to close them on that first appointment. Right. So in that scenario, it's, let me put together my comparative price analysis, and we can go together where we want to position your house, and we can talk about it at that point, getting the paperwork signed and getting it on the market. Right. When you say, so you're still saying, you're making the assumptive close of, we are going to sign the paperwork and get it on the market. Yet at the same time, you're giving them a little space and a little time to make that decision. You're not saying if you list with me, you're saying when you list with me, when we sign the listing appointment or listing paperwork. But it gives them a little room. So we have to read the person that you're really chatting with, so that way you can approach them the way they need to be approached. Does that make sense? So for those of you that have not taken the DISC profile class yet, Mark Weiss, our regional director, teaches that usually like every other month. So watch for that class, because it's really a great way to understand the way that people need to be communicated with. And we have to also realize that the way that we communicate is probably not the way that everybody else is going to communicate, right? So what feels right and natural to us is only going to work for some people. It's not going to work for everyone. So we have to remember that in the conversations that we're having. Is that helpful? All right. So if you guys think about going on a listing appointment tomorrow, what are some of the jitters that you get? What can we go through that would maybe make it feel a little bit better for you?
Allison, can I jump back super quick?
Sure.
Sorry. With a question on the listing packet versus the pre-listing packet, the pre-listing that we just looked at was very short, and this one is very long. I mean, mine that I created through DocuSign or through Command is 24 pages. Mm-hmm. And I sat down at a listing, and put it on the table, and I could feel their eyes rolling, and they had zero interest in going page by page and looking at it all. So do you ever send some of that information in the pre-listing packet also, or really just make sure to go through it all at the time of the appointment?
So what I'd like to do is leave them with a piece of value at every time you have a communication with them. It really doesn't matter what it is, but I like the idea of having the first conversation and then setting the guide to selling your home, then having the listing appointment and leading the listing presentation. I agree with you. I don't think you need to go through it page by page during the appointment, because their eyes are going to roll, right? Especially if there's someone who moves fast, right? And then you leave that appointment with the listing presentation, then you put together the comparative market analysis, you go through together. Now they have that third piece of value that they can go through. So I think that the key to it is not so much going through everything page by page. It's just that every time you leave them with a piece of value. And this just gives you 3 different things that you can leave. And if you feel as though in your listing presentation, there's things that you want them to know before you show up, then swap those pages into your pre-listing presentation, right? So this is where the customization really comes in that if you want them to see something before you walk in the front door, that's what you send beforehand. And all of these things can be swapped in and out. But the biggest thing really is they may not even read it. Like personally, I'm not going to read anything that someone leaves behind. I'm just not. Like I'm a high D, I'm not going to read it. But I will like that someone left me with something because I'll feel like they had a system and they had something to leave, right? They had put something together. They feel like they have some value and they wanted to tell me about that value. And if I have a question about something specific, I might go back to it then, but I'm not going to read it, but I like the fact that they left it. An analytical, an engineer, they're going to read every page of it, right? They're going to want to know, and they're probably going to recite it back to you. In your presentation, you said you did this marketing plan. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? We're definitely going to do that. So the idea is of having these things is that you're now communicating in different ways. If you know that you're someone that gets to the point, then having that presentation there, then it's something that they can go to for detail. So now you're communicating in more ways. Sometimes people don't hear as well as they read. Sometimes people hear better than they read, right? So it's just giving them different mediums and different ways to retain that information. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and you certainly feel it out at the appointment too.
Yeah.
You know how much they want to get into, how much time they want to spend on it, or if they're just like, tapping their fingers and they're just like, well, what's the price? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
So you kind of know how much time to spend on it. So.
Mm-hmm. And you might just use it kind of piecemeal. Like they may ask you about your marketing and then you might just be like, oh yeah, that's on this page. And you flip right to page 10 where it talks about your marketing. Right. So then it's a piece of supporting material for you to have a conversation around. So it's really important for you to know whatever presentation that you're leaving, make sure you know it backwards and forwards. And it really has been customized, and everything that you put in there that you can deliver on. So if you put in there that you're going to have an open house on the first Sunday after you list it, you better have that open house. Otherwise, take it out. Just don't put it in. Right. Because if you set the expectation in that paperwork that you're going to do something and then you don't do it, that's where people become disappointed. So just make sure you understand what's in there, and then whatever you put in there, you plan on fulfilling.
So one thing that I was trying to decide between for myself is the templates in Command have a lot of very specific to the neighborhood, very specific to the house, where you would have to go in each and every time and update those pages and make sure you don't miss anything, on additional pages. So I kind of wanted to create a more general one that I could just have a file and print out that I don't have to revisit and go into every single time. But do you have any thoughts on that? If that's
so, my suggestion would be yes, do that. And when you're going in and doing the research for before you go to the appointment, then you can either do one of two things. You can just print out some MLS sheets of the ones that you think were pertinent to that house and are comparable, that sort of thing. Or you could just flip them into that one page of the presentation and customize that one page. But I'd have the packet ready to go like you were talking about. And then, but I do think you should bring something specific to that house every time in terms of comps. So whether you put them into that template or not, that's your choice, how much time you have, that sort of thing. But I would bring something.
Austin, I love how you said some people hear better than they read and some people read better than they hear. I can be looking at you and you can talk to me for 5 minutes and I will not have listened to a word you just said. But I will read every, and I'm guilty of that. I do that all the time. But I will read every, word on that piece of paper. So I love that you said that.
And it's really true because I'm the exact opposite from you. If it's written on a piece of paper, I will read the first 3 sentences and get bored, right? But if you are talking to me, I'll probably hear everything you say. And
well, I'm always thinking about something. So you can be talking to me and I'll be thinking and I'll just say, yeah. And I'll really have no idea what you said. I'll make it till I make it, but I still won't know what you said.
And if we make the assumption that the person we're talking to is the same as us, we will have a gap.
Right.
So the goal of this material is to make sure we're covering as many of those ways of communication as possible. And not all of them are going to land, and that's okay. if we don't know the answer to how they need to be communicated with, we need to make sure that we're hitting all of them. So we're doing the right thing for them. Mm-hmm. And especially like, do you guys all have RPR through your MLS and boards and that sort of thing? Has anyone ever run the RPR, comparative market analysis? It literally makes me want to like stab my eyes out, right? It has graphs, it has like neighborhood analytics, it has all of this stuff. I printed one out for my husband, who's an engineer, and he was like, he ate it right up. He thought it was the most amazing thing ever. He's like, oh my God, I learned so much. This is really, really cool. And I feel like he was all excited about it. Meanwhile, I look at it and I'm like, oh my God. Right? So learning all these different tools that we have is really important too. Because if you go on that first appointment and you're like, I'm going to deliver the comparative market analysis to them, and you can tell right away that there's someone who likes all those, they like the details, then running the RPR, comparative market analysis, might be the right choice for that person. But if it's the person who's like, all right, what are we going to list it for? I want it on the market tomorrow. They don't want the 40-page CMA, right? They want the 2-pager that says in big bold letters, here's the range that we think you should list in, right? So it's learning enough about the person during the appointment that you can deliver on what they need. Awesome. All right, so what are some objections that you think you might hear from sellers? What are some things they might say to you that are why they shouldn't list with you, their price points, that sort of thing?
I don't want to list because I'm scared I won't be able to find a home.
Ah, that's a big one in today's market, isn't it? I don't want to list because where am I going to go? How might you handle that one?
Short-term rentals. Short-term
rentals. I love that. And you can only suggest that if you know of some short-term rentals, right? So make sure you're asking in your market center for short-term rental options for your clients.
Lease back options.
Lease back. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Seller contingency, where they make it contingent upon them finding and purchasing the home of their choice.
Mm-hmm. Extended closing time frame. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of options we have, right? You guys know from your buyers that buyers are basically willing to do anything, right? They are desperate. So if we know that about buyers, then we also know that sellers can probably get what they need out of a sale. What else? What other objections might you get?
Get overs.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Think it over.
I want to think it over.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I could totally appreciate that, Bill. And I get that selling your house is a really big deal. And I'm really excited to help you in that process. So what questions do you have for me that I can help answer before we part ways? What would stop you from listing right now? And it's not saying to them, you need to list this moment. It's finding out what's holding them back.
Yes.
Right. Because if they're saying that, then they still have questions that you haven't answered. So you need to find out what those questions are. What else?
Allison, I have a potential seller and she's a widow and she's lived in the house for 40 years. So it's a very emotional process. She flat out told me she sees her husband in every room. And she doesn't want to depersonalize the house. And the house is very much 1979. Mm-hmm. So I'm still working with her to get to what is it that she wants? Does she want top dollar? Does she want to sell fast?
She probably really doesn't want to sell. There's something that's forcing her to. Yeah. Right. And we have to figure out what that is. So you could. Mm-hmm. Sorry, it's
I think, yeah, it's too much for her, right? Her age, and it's too much. So she's coming to terms with it. But when someone doesn't want to depersonalize, do you just say okay?
Well, what I would try is that I totally understand that this house has so much meaning to you, and there's so much about it that you love. Yet at the same time, if we're looking to sell it, then we need to make room for our new buyer to love it the same way that you love it. And if they walk in and they see you, it's not going to leave enough room for them to see them. So what we're going to do is make sure that we're making it so that it feels as like it's a canvas for them to come build a beautiful life in, just like you did, right? Don't you want that new buyer to have a wonderful place to live just how you did and have those same experiences here and to love it, right? So we have to create the room for them to do that. So what I tried to do was tap into her emotion, right? So if we know that her motivating factor right now is emotion, then we have to tap into that emotion to get to where we want to go. Is that helpful? I think we're pausing a little bit. That's a common objection though. People feel like they've spent a lot of time and love making their home the way that they wanted it. And the thought of making it not theirs while they're still living there is really hard. Right? So we have to help them to get through that.
Thanks.
Sure.
Allison, I have a question.
Sure.
If you have clients that are reluctant to sell their home because maybe they don't know where they're going to go, I mean, if properties are selling so rapidly, maybe it'd be a good idea to start shopping for a replacement home before you list theirs.
Mm-hmm. So you can do that. And in today's market, it's very hard to get a contingent offer accepted. So you're going to want to find out right off the bat if their lending or their financial situation allows them to purchase maybe before they sell. In that situation, I think it's great, right? In the situation where they need to sell prior to being able to purchase a new home, you're going to find it hard to get an offer accepted in today's market. It just makes their offer that much less competitive having a contingency in there. So normally that is a wonderful solution, and in today's market, it's just a tough solution. But it's very possible that they might be able to afford a house and 2 mortgages, right? A lot of people can get approved for that. So that's a conversation they need to have with their lender to see if it's a possibility. And the reality is that their house, if they price it correctly, it probably will sell quickly. So they're not going to have a period where they have 2 mortgages very long, yet at the same time, the bank needs to approve that. What other objections might you hear? How about, I still have some projects I want to finish, right? I'm still getting it ready. I'll be ready in a couple months. What might we say back to that?
I think you have to go into, like you said, the comps and check out what's going on in the neighborhood. Also, there's going to be either a flattening out or a shift. And it is, I feel like I tell every single one of them, you can wait, but I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Buyers are buying things up like crazy. Yes, there will always be another buyer. However, if the market starts to flatten out, and you can tell by tracking the trends in these neighborhoods, if there's a ton of price changes going on, the shift's happening.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I kind of like instill in them. And again, it's up to them. But if you're starting to see price changes more often than not, you guys in your neighborhoods, they're starting to get shifts. And in some of the pockets that I look at, you know, number one, it's either they went too high. And as far as I'm concerned, price change is a kiss of death because the buyers come in saying, what's wrong with this house in this market? You lose that, I got to buy this house right away.
Yeah, we hear a lot of that, right? If it's been on the market for more than a week these days, people are like, why? What happened? Yeah, they're a little nervous about it. What else? What other objections? What are you nervous about someone saying?
Well, some people just want to get it over with. You know, I mean, basically, they just want to, you know, get this process over with and done with as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And as painful as and less painful as possible. So these people are in a hurry and their type of mindset. And, you know, these people, they're serious. They want to sell or they want to buy. I mean, they don't want to mess around.
Right. So for them, it's how are you going to make the process quick, easy, painless? Right? Here is my process. Here's what you can expect. Here's what I know I can expect. Here's how I'm going to handle that. And here's how it's going to be easy for you. Right? So when we put it on the market on a Wednesday and we start getting showing requests, and then we'll push them through the weekend and we'll ask for all the offers by Monday. What we'll do is here's how I'm going to contact you in order to schedule all the showings. We'll put them all in this time block, whatever works for you. And then when we have offers coming in on Monday at 5 o'clock, let's schedule a time now where we're going to get on the phone. We'll go through the offers and we'll be done. Right?
Yeah.
So you're walking them through that process of how it's going to be easy for them and what they can expect, right?
Well,
If all they want to do is
then your day is a closing day because that's the day you get paid.
Exactly. So for the person, if we were to have that same type of conversation with the client, we were talking about Amy's client a few minutes ago, who's really emotional. If we started talking about that, she would probably freak out. She'd probably be like, "Oh my God, I am not ready. I'm like, that's way too much for me," right? So listen to what it is that your people are saying, and then they'll tell you what they want to hear. They tell you exactly what they want to hear. You just have to listen, right? Ask the right questions and then listen.
People think they can sell it themselves. That's a big one now.
The market's really hot right now. I think I choose to sell it myself. Right? Why would I pay a realtor?
So how do you preempt that where they're not actually giving you that objection? So you don't even know they're thinking about it or considering it. But so I just had this happen where, you know, we had the listing appointment. She wasn't ready to move for a while into a nursing home. She never mentioned considering for sale by owner, but now she's selling for sale by owner, or she thinks she is. It's not even a buyer who's pre-qualified, but that's what she thinks she's doing. So I never objected it or countered it because it was never an objection. But obviously I want to preempt that now.
So maybe you could say something like, "Wow, isn't today's market crazy? I mean, I've been talking in my office lately and we're just hearing about all these properties that are selling so quickly and the craziness that is surrounding that. So what I've done in my process is really make sure that sellers feel really well taken care of through that, and that make the process as seamless and as easy as possible. And then by doing that, I also make sure that they get the most amount of money. Because if I know that I am marketing it out to so many people the way that I normally market, then we're going to have so many showings. So now the next step becomes, how do I handle all these showings? And I guess that's where I want to make your life easy, and then I'm going to make that so easy for you and handle all of that, and we'll get them all scheduled and make that process as quick and painless as possible, right? So if you kind of like use some anecdotes of how crazy it's been, and then how you are mitigating that, then it might take that off the table without putting the idea of FSBO in their head. As soon as you say FSBO, then they're gonna be like, "Oh wait, that's an option," right? So, but you just want to kind of let them know your value through today's market, if that makes sense.
Adam, the other thing that's helped me have them at least think about it is that you put down that most buyers, 89% of buyers have an agent. We have access to 350 automatically through Keller Williams Capital District. There's another 5,000, and stick to the marketing side. And if they're statistical, if they're analytical, I'm not sure if this person is. And then the other thing I said, and this lady was like, "I don't even want to deal with that." One of my listings had 39 showings in 3 days, and it had 21 offers. I said, "And this is what you're paying me for, is my expertise to help manage that and not," and this lady was like, "There's no way I'm doing this. I'm by myself." So those are the things that I found helpful in this market of why you need an agent. I don't know if you probably already done that, but that's what's helped me.
Right. I almost want to make it more explicit in the conversation instead of beating around the bush, because I feel like they're all thinking about it at this point.
They are, and I have, because they're like, well, man, why don't I just sell it by myself? And if they get that blunt with me, I'm like, all right, well then the national statistic is that you are going to get a 14% less on your house doing it yourself. It's going to take more time if they're that blunt about it. But I also tell them if they're not and they're more emotional and they go back and forth, I say, you know, some people think in this market that they can handle it. And I tell them, unless you're a project manager and you have project management skills, you need to find the right buyer with the right terms that meet your needs. And that's what I'm here for, because I do this every day. And that usually shuts them down too. Because it's either, I had no idea about these things. The other thing I've done, just from a FSBO standpoint, because I'm doing the whole off-market thing, is I'll drop off a PCD to the FSBOs and say, hey, did you know that if you don't fill this out, you know, New York state law requires that you're going to issue a $500 credit. And at least that's how I get them to start talking. But for sellers, I just drop the facts to them in whatever language because their personality type. And sooner or later, you'll hit their pain point. And they're like, oh, I had no idea. At least for me. Now, granted, I got to find a way to do it better, because they're just like, all right, you know, because I'm in the whole, I need to get my house ready thing. So I appreciate Allison doing that, because I have told them that the shit. So now I'm dumping them with so many houses are in price changes. So many houses are coming on the market. You're losing the opportunity of being almost like the exclusive listing in your area. I'm constantly dumping facts towards them to get them to push harder.
Or maybe even like, and find an anecdote of one that didn't work. Like I remember yesterday, Carrie and I had to go to her house, and on her way to Carrie's house, there's a FSBO. She's like, oh, that's been on the market for over a year and she hasn't sold it. Right. And there could be a jillion reasons why. But one of them, the biggest one, is probably that whatever it is, her expectations aren't realistic. So I think if you find a story of, you know, we've seen a lot of people try to do for sale by owners, and here are some scenarios of why it didn't work. And I think why it's so important to have an agent is so that you can understand and have your fingertip on the pulse of the market. Because we watch people sell their houses even in this market, and then we're looking at it saying, oh my gosh, they could have gotten so much more money. Or we've seen people put their houses on the market and become overwhelmed by the amount of interest that they're getting, and they have no one to help manage it. So I don't want that to happen for you. And that's why I would like to help you to sell your house, right? That's the value that I bring.
This may be a dumb question, but when you have a for sale by owner, can they have it listed in the MLS, or is it not in the MLS?
It will not be in the MLS. They may get it onto Zillow or something like that, but it will not be in the MLS unless it's listed with an agent.
Kristen, there is no dumb question.
Agreed.
Not a dumb question, because, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Adam.
So it may only be on like one site and not listed through all the third-party sites that the MLS will do.
Exactly.
Well, for sale by owners will list on the MLS by paying those little $500 fees. There's some agents who will take a $500 fee and they'll post essentially a for sale by owner on the MLS, and then in the remarks it'll say to call the homeowner to schedule showings.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's like a discount broker. So Josh is right in that it's essentially a for sale by owner. Technically it's not, because it is listed with an agent, and they're just doing it at a really, really discounted rate, and then they're expecting the seller to do all of the work. But what's important about that distinction is that if you are looking for listings, it would be unethical to go after that listing while they're listed with another agent, right? That'd be an ethics violation. So if it's a true for sale by owner that has no agent listing it in the MLS, they're fair game. Or if they're kind of the discount broker fake for sale by owner, which is essentially the same thing, Josh, I totally agree. Those are ones that we really shouldn't go after. So just as a broker of our office, I have to say that.
And I was surprised because I learned this on, I think that Pivot Shift Ahead, the morning one. If you have a for sale by owner, they think if they list with one third-party source that it goes across. If you literally check all the different third-party sources and just do a neighborhood snapshot, you're going to find out that most likely 2 or 3 of them, their listing's not going to show up at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way to educate them about.
Mhm.
What do
Can
you
you
do
point out
with
too, how
discount?
much? Can you point out too, I mean, how much more money they're gonna make? Like, we had an agent here, there was a for sale by owner, they had a buyer at 280. And they ended up talking to an agent, the agent came in and the house ended up selling for 330 with like 35 offers. So they basically sold the house for free and the people still had more money. I mean, isn't that kind of situation something you could bring up too?
Absolutely. Use that anecdote, use that story. And I
What
think
do
that
you-
that's the key to marketing, right? The key to all marketing is to get the most amount of eyes on a product, right? So as a for sale by owner, you may get some eyes, you may get some buyers. Yet we know today's market is really competitive and people are willing to bid up and go into multiple offer situations and offer well over listing price. So unless you are sure that you got it in front of every potential buyer possible, you will never know if you got the most amount of money for your property. So that's where I come in. That's where my job is to make sure your property gets in front of as many eyes as you can. I don't want to just sell your house. I want to sell your house for the most amount of money in the time frame that makes sense for you.
Can I ask you one more thing? I'm sorry, I feel like I'm
Go
not.
for it. Do it.
What's your script for, oh, this is the discount broker thing? They're only gonna charge, and I know what I say, I just want to hear what you say. This broker's only gonna get paid $1,000 to do this. And I know, I just want to hear what your words are because I'm gonna write them down.
So Michelle, have you ever heard of the saying, you get what you pay for? Right? Yeah. So putting it in the MLS is just a really small piece of what I do. And really what I do is make sure that the process is getting you what you need. That discount broker doesn't know that, nor do they really care, right? Their job is just to put it in the MLS. That's their business model. Yet I know in talking to you that there's so much more that's important to you. And I want to make sure that those things are achieved. So are you willing to go on this ride with me and get it done, right? I don't know.
You hire the discount doctor. Would you
Yeah.
hire the cheapest attorney?
Mhm.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, right? Like Olivia was saying, do you want someone that's going to open the book on your surgery right before you go in?
That was just like an example. My dad just had surgery and the guy had like no idea what he was doing. And it turned out like horrible. And I'm like, how just, don't even get me started, but I'm just like, wow.
Usually when you end up talking to someone who lists with for a discount broker, they almost always have a story about how it didn't go well and they were disappointed in some way, right? Oh yeah, I had to do all the work myself. Oh, I had no communication. Have you ever been to the buyer's agent on one of those deals where the listing agent is a discount broker and then the seller starts calling you and they're complaining about their agent, right? Like, why aren't they having this conversation with me? I have no idea, right? So any of those objections that you're getting from sellers in that situation, use those in your conversation when someone says, I'm thinking about listing with a discount broker. I can totally appreciate that. And here are challenges that I have heard in the past. Here are some challenges you might run into in that situation. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move into your favorite part of the day, which is some script practice. Okay. So we are in the Elementals script book, and that there are objections in there that are seller objections. So let's go through some of those. We're going to spend 30 minutes. So it's 10:51. We're going to come back at 11:20. And in the meantime, we're going to go through those seller objections in the Elemental script book. Sound good?
What page is that?
That is on page, I believe it's on page 9. Go through. Page 10. It looks just like this, seller objections, okay? All right, I'm gonna send you to your breakouts and we'll be back at 11:20.
positive, educational and positive. And if it's not positive, I ask myself, do we need to have this conversation now? You know, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how to go about it. Like I kept looking in the MLS sites or site trying to find a church, but most of them are kind of like out of her price range.
Have you looked in your area to see what the zoning requirements are for a church?
No.
Like, is there distinct zoning for religious facilities? Are religious facilities allowed in any form of zoning? Because then you can find her a warehouse, right? You just need something pretty large and a place she can call a church. With
Sorry to
parking.
interrupt, guys, but we're back in the main room now. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
We did.
Oh, I did not. We were chatting.
I thought so. You both
Sorry.
took your cameras off, so no worries. So, how did script practice go? What were your guys' thoughts?
Good.
Good.
I have more things I don't think I would say, but the point is to get the point across in your own words.
Yeah, yeah. It helps you to help formulate that response, right? You say it, if you say it a few times and you're like, this isn't how I want to say it, then you've already said it a few times and you've already figured out how you want to say it, right? Because you're working through it. So that's awesome. That's good when you have that realization. That's called internalization. Awesome. Who else? Anyone else have anything they would like to share? Any ahas? What are you thinking? All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do ahas from today as a whole, and then we're going to do some phone calls. So we're gonna do ahas now, just in case we lose some people during phone calls, which I don't expect to lose any, but just in case. So what kind of ahas did you guys have from today's class as a whole? What were your takeaways? Now remember that ahas are helpful for everyone in the room, because maybe it'll help them hear something a little differently than the way they heard it the first time. So feel free to share. I wasn't that bad, was I?
So I saw in the scripts that the current market almost makes some of those scripts easier, because like the pricing objection one that says most buyers will see your home, you know, in the first 3 weeks or whatever it is, you can modify that to the first 3 days.
Oh yeah.
If it hasn't sold in the first 3 days, everyone's going to think something's wrong with it because you priced it wrong.
You don't want to be the listing that's gone stale, do you?
Right. When every home's selling with multiple offers over the weekend, how are you going to look when you were the one that didn't? Like you don't want to be that stigmatized property.
And the reality is that so many houses are going really, really quickly to multiple offers and all that stuff, but not every house, right? Not every one. There's ones out there that are getting stale, that are not priced correctly, that are kind of a funky house. They need a funky buyer, right? There's some outliers out there. So we also have to set the expectation that just because they put it on the market does not mean it's going to sell because the market's amazing, right? They still need to be strategic, because there are instances out there where houses aren't selling, and if they don't want to be one of those, right? I don't want to see that happen to you, because in today's market, it's really a bigger deal than it ever was, because it sticks out like a sore thumb. Right. Awesome. What else did you learn today?
I think what I liked about what you said is more on the agent side is, you know, we're all going to get so busy eventually, and just to remember to, I think you worded it, under promise, over perform, something like that, where, you know, make sure you're doing what you say you're going to do, and if you can, do it sooner.
Yeah, remember the expectations. Whatever you promise is the expectation you set, and you have full control over that. You have full control over that. So make sure that if you promise it, over deliver on it, right? Awesome. What else? Two more, then we'll go into some phone calls.
The tips on how to talk to an emotional seller, how to reframe her concerns as, don't you want somebody new to come in and have a fresh start to make the memories that you've made. That was really good at helping me to get her where, unfortunately, because of health reasons, she needs to move.
Yeah.
So it's hard. So that was really helpful, and I appreciate it.
Oh, good. I'm really glad. Awesome. All right. One more aha from today.
So I really like the reminder about that everyone learns or sees or appreciates information differently, because for me, that's huge. I love, not that I'm going to read everything, but I love tactile. I'm an artist. I want to have stuff in my hands. So I really like that. So for me, kind of thought, well, maybe I should be asking these people, how do you like to be presented best? Do you want me to come talk to you mostly? Do you want to see paperwork? Do you, because those things, like you're saying, some people are just going to throw it out. Some people are going to be, you're going to annoy if you present the wrong, so to figure that ahead of time, I think would be helpful.
Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you. All right. So now we're going to spend the next 30 minutes making some calls. You guys can just put yourself on mute. You can turn your cameras off or leave them on, whatever you'd like to do. If you have any questions, I'll be here. And let's make some calls for 30 minutes, and then you guys are off the hook, right? Let's go get some appointments.
So I'm going to leave and come back because I'm using my phone right now as the video.
You got it. Sounds good. All right. Good luck. All right, guys, how'd your calls go? Oop, you're on mute, Dominic.
Yes, I made about 3 calls, and one of the person told me that there was some action in his neighborhood, and I just told them, just spread the word that I'm a real estate salesman, and just let them know about me. And second one, I had to leave a message. He's a landscaper. I go, well, if I get any clients, I'll refer them to you. And if you know anybody, I tell them, if you're selling or buying a house, you're divorced or you're a smaller family, just give me a call. I can take care of you. And the third caller, I kind of, talked to him. I talked to him real quick because he told me he bought a house 3 years ago. And I told him that I was a realtor, and that was about it.
Awesome. That's great. Well, it's 3 calls that you hadn't made yet that you now have made. So great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think I'll let you guys go for the day. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for leaning in about seller appointments. And you guys did wonderful. So have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. You've been great.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, guys.